All right, cut.
We are doing this story on the God in our prayers, and we thank God that we've been able to handle the first topic, was Jehovah itself, the name. And now we want to look at the other aspects of God, which is forming our theme too. And this is, what is it that God cannot do? It's a very interesting question. What is it that God cannot do? Knowing Him, knowing His attributes, knowing that His name is God. And so the theme that will be taking us through this, the verses that will be taking us through these themes are Psalms 23:5. It says, God prepares a table before me in the presence of my enemies. Very powerful verse. The other one that I was just putting to support it is that is 2 Corinthians 10:3-5. We do not war according to the flesh, but our weapons are divinely powerful. We destroy everything raised up against God, and we take every thought captive.
So, hi, my name is Stacey Maritim, and the verse, Psalms 23 verse 5, well, I haven't really thought about it that much, so I wouldn't say I have a deeper meaning to it. But if I was to give it a meaning, I'd say God exalts me over my enemies. Like, He wouldn't let me feel shame in front of people who perhaps despise me, and He helps me overcome challenges. In high school, I fell sick during my KCC period, and I found it really challenging for me to get through that period, preparing for the exams, the pressure. And I'd say God really got me through that period. If it wasn't for God, I honestly don't know what I would have done. Yeah, so He helped me so much. Just by the grace of God, I got a really good grade. I was able to join uni, and I really thank Him every day of my life for that instance.
He prepares a table before me in the presence of my enemies. What that verse means for me, it's that even when I'm surrounded, that God will still find a way to get me out of it. The scripture, He restores the ears that zimeliwa na nzige. I don't know how that goes in English, but when I see He prepares a table before me in the presence of my enemies, even when I go out there looking for trouble, that He still has a way of restoring me. He will not let me be put to shame because I am associated with Him. I am His child. Yeah, I think that is what that means for me. Mahali ambapo nimeona mkono wa Bwana. Jamani, sijui kama tuko na muda, but manze, God's faithfulness has been present for me, like, I think throughout my entire life, from the stories that I'm told as a kid to now specific moments. I think one of my most life-changing experiences was last year in October when we got into a car accident. And when I look at the images of that car right now, and I look at myself, I don't know how I am here. Like, it truly, truly had to be the hand of God. I think that is one of the most significant moments. He's pulled me from extreme cases of despair, anxiety, depression, and to be here enjoying Him fully, it only has to be Him. And say, Manzeni God, I made it through, and I don't know how I did it. Yeah, Sarah Kay spoke to me.
He prepares a table before my enemies. It actually means that God's favor and grace is always with me, regardless of the things that I'm going through, regardless of what people say, regardless of my enemies, how they're trying to attack me, Yeah, it actually means that God is always faithful regardless of anything that I'm going through. God has really been so faithful to me. I have seen him in my life. There is a time I was very sick. And I remember I was asking myself, how will I know that God is my healer if I've not been sick? How will I know that he's my provider if I've not lacked anything? And God, he has always been revealing himself to my life, and I'm so grateful because he's been a good father. Hajawai niwachilia, hajawai ni fail, and I know him as my healer. Yeah.
It brings to perspective something like a battle, because there's a lot that goes on in the world, and we get to brush shoulders with a lot. And for me, I think it means that it doesn't matter the look of our heart. It doesn't matter before God. We can be enemies to someone. Someone can be an enemy to me. And what I think from that is I think God gets to see each and every one of us from our own different perspective. Yeah, but for me, the big part of it is God gets to fight my battles for me in front of my enemies. The enemies that want to devour me, God can still put me before them and just fight for me, like even without lifting a finger. Yeah, I have a recent story that led me to baptism. Yeah, so I got baptized one Sunday ago, last week. And for me, it's I think it came to mind after really it was a season of like thinking through and asking God, Lord, I want to I was telling God that I want to seek him genuinely without being influenced by the fact that I was born Christian. I was born at a Christian home, raised Christian. I was telling God I want to have a personal story from me that pushes me to seek you genuinely. Yeah, so during that time I got into a season of prayer, and I remember I told one of my friends to help me out in praying. Yeah, and after that I just started seeing the hand of God. I remember there's this one prayer that I wrote down, and there's a certain day it was answered word by word. I actually read it out that day, and it really came in strongly when that prayer was answered. And after that prayer, I think it took me to a different journey of like now starting to intentionally seek God. Yeah, so for me, that's how I've seen the hand of God. How I got into baptism, I just had a voice. Okay, something just came to me, and I mentioned baptism in my head. Yeah, and I thought of it, and luckily enough, the church was also preparing to start baptism classes, and I enrolled and I got baptized. And for me, it's really amazing, and I feel really good that it was my own personal decision that I made. Yeah.
God has chosen me, and he will be there for me in times of my need, even if I don't think I really need it, but he has promised that he'll always be there for me. And it's now up to me to fully trust in him, because faith moves mountains. And yeah, that's what I'm getting from that verse. And times that God has shown up for me, and just going back through how I grew up, God has been there for us in the deepest time of need, and I'm really grateful. There are times I doubted There are times it's the prayers of my folks that kept me in the faith, but God had shown himself, and he said if I believe in him, he'll come through. And sometimes it's very hard to do that, but at the end of the day, he gives you reassurance. And sometimes it's not that voice in your head, sometimes it's in a reel where you least expect it. You just hear someone saying something with a reassurance from God, and that keeps you going throughout the week. And that's how I've seen his faithfulness. He doesn't show himself. He doesn't use that voice in your head. He uses anything he can, anything that reaches to you. And that's why I really trust in him. And when I'm in doubt, I try to. And that has kept me in the faith.
Yeah, I think what comes to my mind is there's this poster that people used to have on their houses, sana in the living room. Between living room and dining, there was always this thing in on the walls that was saying, as for me and my house, we will serve the Lord. And I think, I think it's a different verse, but it has that same theme for like dwelling in the house of the Lord. And I used to really wonder, did everyone like agree to have it on their walls in their living rooms? Where is this convention where people decided they will all have it in their living rooms? It felt like everyone I knew in our circles had them. Alafu sisi hatukuwa nayo. And it was interesting to see it everywhere. But I think it refers to just being in the house of the Lord. I think that's it's a unique concept to think of God as your father, as the person who is home to you. I think I struggle a little bit to have that much trust in God and in the process of my daily life. I feel like every season of life, there's a particular way in which he just decides to test it. It's like, let me see. I don't know if it's him or the devil testing, but I find myself struggling a bit to trust God in the big things of life, the parts that I have no control over how it goes. I consider myself a very privileged person. I think in every possible sense of the word. I think God has always, I think, made things easier for me, or at least in my perspective, than the people around me. I think he's always placed people around me that I feel like, wow, maybe we should be helping out this person. I think in every season of my life, we've lived with a cousin who my parents were sort of helping out, and I think it put in that culture of like helping people out. And even in the work that I do, construction, I find myself constantly trying to help people out in their personal lives. And I consider that a position of privilege. I think it's the biggest blessing to be put in a place where you can help people around you. That's, I would say, the biggest privilege that I have seen in terms of the goodness of God in my life.
Enemies can be things in life which don't want you to progress. They can be obstacles in life. So that times personally, I've been struggling with migraines, terrible migraines, like since I was a kid. And sometimes, most of the time, zimekuwa obstacle in my progress in life. Oh, Mara, I can't go where, I can't do this because of my migraines. The fact that I'm here today is I'm genuinely grateful. There's a time when I was in class 5, this was the first time I was going up kwa altar, were singing. And I remember that day, we had practice because we had a presentation. It was in the main church, main sanctuary. And Yusiku, my head started aching when I was up or Jew. Do you know, I actually cancelled it out. That's why I know God has power over everything. I literally cancelled it out because why would you? What attacks were those, honestly? Yeah. So I've just been pushing on, knowing the enemy and knowing how to fight the enemy and understanding what the enemy wants and not giving it to it. Yeah. Because once you want something out of your life, you starve it. And yeah, that worked.
So to me, this verse shows God's provision and care in the face of opposition. By setting a table in the presence of my enemies, God demonstrates His care, and His care overcomes all altars in that it's an image of God's blessings and favor that stands strong regardless of any threat or opposition. And this verse reminds, it's more like a reminder to all believers that God's blessings aren't diminished by challenges, rather His care is continuous, also joy, peace, and abundance in whatever circumstance that you're facing.
What is it that when you think of, you can actually start like doing a brag song that Utadu, my God cannot fail. Utadu, my God is not decapitated. Utadu, my God is not limited. Utadu. Yeah, and so that's the question we're going to send out there for people to respond to and to share their stories and keep them coming. What is it that God cannot do? He prepares a table before me in front of my enemies. So if you've watched this, if you've watched all the stories that people have shared on what is it that God cannot do, we thank you so much and we appreciate you. And if you have any stories to just send and just to share and just to add on it, just please DM us and just reach out and you will be blessed. Thank you so much. God bless you.